Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Be Our Guest. I'm Janki, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are a not-for-profit theater company based in New York and in Connecticut, developing new plays and musicals that promote and celebrate diversity. For more information, check out our website, liveandincolor.org. Earlier this year, I was asked to direct a production of Godspell, the musical, at Emerson Stage for their in-person season. But of course, then theater shut down due to the pandemic. And so Emerson Stage's artistic director, Annie Levy, and I decided to get a little more creative and pivot towards the virtual realm. So in less than 3 months, along with a team of 17 writers, and an incredible group of students from Emerson College, we created a brand new show called This Golden Day, a virtual musical. Later on in this episode, I'll be talking to the 5 of the writers of This Golden Day. But first, grab a cocktail and let's begin by chatting with theater maker, educator, and artistic director of Emerson Stage, the amazing Annie Levy. Hello, my friend.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
It's an incredible time to be making theater, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah. So that's how I'm doing.
First of all, where are you joining us from?
So I'm joining you from Boston, Massachusetts.
Yes.
From my home that I've gotten very close with in the past couple of months.
Yes, as we all have.
Yes.
So I want to start sort of at the beginning, I guess, or in the middle, I guess. What first inspired you to become a director?
It's a really great question. So my sort of origin myth as a director is twofold, I would say. The first is I was studying, when I was in college, I was studying abroad in London on an acting program. And I remember we were doing, I think, one of the Hermia, Helena, Lysander, Demetrius scenes. And I had the impulse to create a moment with another actor. And it felt a little sort of out of line for an actor to do. And I remember having this moment of, oh, this thing that I want to try could establish a whole set of rules for this world, for this scene. And that was the first moment where I don't want to be in this world. I want to be outside, sort of establishing the world, setting up the world, and allowing others into the world to create. So that was the first moment where I thought, maybe I'm going to find more creative and theatrical satisfaction outside of the playing space than within. And the other moment was when I was an undergrad, you had to take a class in sort of overall design before you took your beginning director's class. And I was futzing around with something having to do with color and texture, and just thinking the way that texture could tell the story of this character in this moment. And I'll never forget, my faculty member came over to me, and she was sort of a founding member of Bread and Puppet Theater, so comes from political and highly theatrical background. And she took a look at just how I was sort of interacting with texture and color. And she said to me, and she's a woman of few words, she just said, "Oh, you're going to be a director." And this was before this was before I'd taken the class. I was an actor. It was, and then I remembered, and then I took that acting class, and it completely changed the way I looked at the world. And when that clicked into place, I thought, well, this is the path for me. So that's how I threw myself on the altar of being a director.
Well, and you had such a wonderful career. Your work is always so wonderful and so innovative, and you became artistic director of Emerson Stage only a year ago.
Correct.
First of all, what makes Emerson Stage so unique?
So what I think is really terrific about Emerson Stage is that Emerson Stage is the producing organization within the performing arts program at Emerson College. And for many people, myself included, when I was an undergrad, when I was a grad student, the productions, that it was folded in as the larger life, which is great, except it doesn't really allow you to consider the questions of producing, the questions of the way titles come together to make a season, all of the questions that in the professional realm, if you find yourself in a leadership position of a theater, of a producing organization, these questions that you need to consider, they're not part of the undergraduate and often the grad experience. So what I thought was so terrific, as a theater maker, but also as an educator who wants to give to as many students as possible that experience of looking at the world a different way in a directing class, I saw those two passions come together at Emerson. And so when the job opened up and I got to take a look at, the way that, because the performing arts program has so many different BFA programs that all need to be woven together in what Emerson Stage produces and the stories that Emerson Stage tells, by golly, it felt like a challenge that I really wanted to take on. And so here I am.
Well, speaking of challenges, I'm sure you did not expect your first season to turn out like this.
Yes.
So Emerson has had to switch to live digital production models to produce theater very quickly, as much of the arts community has. How did you and your team go about adapting the entire theater program for this?
So Emerson Stage and the entire college shut down and switched to remote learning last March. And at the time, we had 2 shows left in the season, one that I happened to be directing in our big spring musical. And we canceled them both. With everything else that was going on, there wasn't the creative thinking to start to even imagine how we could tell those stories, outside of the theater that we had been producing for, which felt like a real loss. It felt like a real loss creatively. It felt like a real loss in terms of as a teaching opportunity. And then as soon as everything sort of ended, I got a couple of opportunities to start directing in this, brave new world of online theater. And there was something satisfying to it, but what was really satisfying is both in participating in it and just watching the, for lack of a better word, evolution of this new art form start to emerge. There seemed over the summer like a real opportunity to invest in what is this new form of art making that seems to be coming out of this moment. And one of the questions we ask ourselves when we make theater, and one of the questions that I want my students to consider when they're making work is, why now, right? So now that we understand that the world is what the world is, and that we're only able to interact with each other remotely like we're doing right now, there is this understanding that a new type of storytelling is going to be necessary, but a new type of story is going to be absolutely vital. So over the summer, my colleagues at Emerson Stage really started to think about, okay, what are we going to do next year? Not only did we already have our season, the first 4 shows had been cast, the first 4 shows had been designed, the first show of the season had already gone into rehearsal, albeit online. And with a large amount of encouragement of what we had been seeing in the larger world in terms of what's possible with online theater, we wanted to invest ourselves in this experiment, right? I'm a big believer that all theater is an experiment, and like all experiments, it can fail. That is a possible result to an experiment. So I thought, what a better opportunity to really throw ourselves at the unknown here and see what happens. And there was this trust that it would seem professionally worthwhile in terms of what we're training our students to do. And that our students would evolve along with us as this form evolved. So we committed to going on this journey, I think, end of June, early July. And once we embraced the problem, it then became a question of how we were going to go about solving it. And so it's This Golden Day is our 4th show. It's our final show of the fall. And then we got 5 more in the spring, and we will have gathered a lot of data about, you know, the evolution of this art form over the course of our 2020-2021 season.
Absolutely. I mean, the first 3, of course, were plays, and
Yes.
were, I mean, really beautifully done. I mean, surprising to me even that you could accomplish so much in so little time with, you know, with the experiment, as you said.
Right.
So, This Golden Day is the first musical, so it has been a very exciting process to figure out that element of it. So I want to talk about, after much discussion between us about what the show should look like when we sort of planned Godspell, you came up with the idea of centering it around different religions' perception of the Golden Rule. Why were you inspired to tell the story? And can you talk a little bit about how that all came about based on conversations?
So one of the reasons why we were going to be producing Godspell is that Godspell had come out of the subcommittee that helps to pick the musical titles. And one of the things that attracted our musical theater subcommittee, which is made up of students and faculty, to Godspell is it explores how a community gets created, right? This is, it's about the love that's needed to create a community. One of the things that I thought that was, you know, somewhat troubling about Godspell is that it's through a very particular lens. It's using a very particular text, and it's community through a certain worldview. And I started to think about, well, this idea of creating community seems like a really good thing to be exploring in 2020. And when it was understood that we couldn't continue on with Godspell, I wanted to embrace the fact that if we're starting and creating something new, how could this thing that we create be, you know, of this moment, in this moment, and for this moment? And as I was thinking about the way the community works of this moment, for this moment, and in this moment, certainly there is a relationship between where community comes out of religious affiliations. But I was very curious of how could we be a little wider in our views in terms of what makes community. And Norman Rockwell, of all people, had this print that was, or this graphic that was in the Saturday Evening Post at one point, where he went through 10 major world religions, and he found where the Golden Rule fits into the sacred texts of 10 world religions. And I was thinking to myself, you know, if we wanted to create something, what is something that is sacred across the board? And seeing this Norman Rockwell print, I was thinking, yes, we could explore this concept of the Golden Rule through multiple lenses. Because while we all were brought up with this idea of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, when you really sit and think about it, and you think about it especially in this present moment, for this present moment, and of this present moment, it's not there's some stickiness to explore in this Golden Rule, and there's some tension to explore in the Golden Rule, and the existence of that tension made me feel that this is something that we could explore theatrically, because it wasn't all life is wonderful, the end. This is a process of figuring things out, which I think is a good way of looking at where we are right now. We're in the process of figuring things out.
Yeah, and then, you know, obviously you came to me with that, and of course I was like, that's brilliant, let's do it. The next step was how?
Right.
Steps. So, you know, initially, you know, part of, I think, the exciting thing for the collaboration between Emerson Stage and Live in Color was the promoting and celebration of new artists and new work. And so I feel so fortunate that we were able to bring these 17 writers to the piece. And just for our viewers, basically each writer was was able to choose a religion as their prompt for their little 5-minute section of the musical, which they had to write. And that was sort of the inspiration for their piece. I think based on what we spoke about, that it didn't have to be religious based. It was more the themes that it brought up, and they were paired with a specific actor. And so there was a great collaboration between all the creatives, the actor, the writer, to create these pieces that have gotten streamed together in this evening. That for me, what's so exciting about it is having these 17 writers. It's such unique perspectives, and really the epitome of diversity in thought.
Right.
But so jumping into that, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, we open on Thursday, but can you talk a little about the steps getting to Thursday?
Sure. So, I mean, normally when I think one goes out to create something brand new, there's a little bit more time between the commitment to creating something brand new and, I don't know, first rehearsal. But part of embracing everything was embracing that we didn't have a lot of time. So once the writers were identified and the writers clicked in and connected with a take on the golden rule, and you matched them so beautifully with the actor that they were going to be working with, there was some conversation. There was a meeting that happened between the actors and the writers where they were able to talk about, and the writers were able to get to know the actors a little bit, and they were able to sort of create their own unique take on it. We had a first pass of the script of draft. We went into rehearsal. I know we don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to get into the ways that sort of the evolution of online theater. There's a whole branch of the evolution of singing online that is evolving as its own special, separate rate. So once we had the script all come together, because we were doing this as part of Emerson Stage, it's not just that the students are actors, it's that the designers are students, it's that the stage management team and the production supervision team is students. While there is a lot of guidance on how the heck to do any of this online, with being guided by individuals who are slightly out into the field, we're all in this together figuring it out. So it was a process of figuring out, how do we honor these stories that the writers have created? How do we tell them effectively on this medium? And how do we give all of the students both an opportunity to understand the process of creating something new and the act of creating something new? Yeah.
Well,
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And, it's been such a fun roller coaster, I have to say, just in terms of being with the Emerson community. All the designers and, as you said, all the stage men and the administrative staff had really jumped on board and very quickly have, as I keep saying, jumped into the deep end of the swimming pool with this project, and have done beautifully. So I'm really excited for people to get to see the work. Emerson is such an exciting place. And, I think as you said, the show is so current and of this time and talks about a lot of issues that are going on in the world and, during the pandemic and with the environment and the Black Lives Matter movement. And in light of that, Emerson Theater Department has committed to doing anti-racist work. How have these practices been implemented into the education and into the culture?
Through ongoing conversation. I'm sure, depending on who you ask, you would get different opinions of how far along we are in having these conversations. I think it starts with awareness, and I think it starts with intention. Because we're a pretty large community, it can take a while for decisions made in any part of the community to sort of ripple out to be seen, understood, and felt by the rest of the community. So, as I'm new in this position, and as the world is becoming new, and as the profession is becoming, not new, but it's shifting and expanding of what it can be, considering the evolution of online theater. Right now, there is much in motion, and the hope is that as things slow down and we have a moment to take a deep breath and look at each other, that there will be that sort of the surface level of things that are problematic there's agreement that progress is being made so that we are able to continuously dig deeper to get to the root of what's working and the root of what's not working.
Well, I have to say, I feel very honored to be invited into the conversation and to have been part of this really exciting new form of theater. And I have to thank you for that. Oh. And the collaboration has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Annie. It's been really, really wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
And the conversation will continue. It's actually now time for me to bring in some of the amazing writers from this golden day. Please help me welcome 5 extremely talented artists: Timothy Huang, Tia DeShazor, Jessica Wu, Rona Siddiqui, and Yan Li. Yay! Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. Where are each of you calling in from? Let's start with Tia.
I'm in East Harlem, New York.
Tim?
I'm in West Harlem, actually.
Oh, neighbors. Yan?
Yeah, we're going to see each other later today.
Yeah. Yan, where are you?
I'm in Woodside.
Woodside. And Rona?
I'm on the beach in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh.
Jealous.
Jealous. And Jessica?
East Harlem. We might be neighbors.
I'm so excited to see all of you. Let's jump right in. Let's start with Yan. Yan, you work both in the professional realm as a writer and also in the educational realm as a music director and a theater professor. From your experience, how is education for theater adapted during this crazy time?
Wow, I guess everyone's just has more time with their thoughts. So there's a lot of conversations happening now, and trying to frame that through Zoom. So certain things get more concentrated and certain things get more dispersed through the screen form. But I think when this whole thing started back in March, everybody thought that it felt like, this was a temporary fire drill, and they're going to wave us back into the class again pretty quickly. But then I think when the fall semester started, people started realizing, I got to actually figure out how to make this work long term. So it was really nice coming back from the fall semester and seeing the perspectives of students kind of change a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's very much been the journey for all of us.
Yeah.
Just realizing that we were going to be stuck here for a while. Rona, you are one of the recipients of the prestigious 2020 Jonathan Larson Grant. What was it like receiving this honor for your musical theater writing during this crazy time when everything shut down?
I mean, to be honest, it couldn't have been a better time because, of course, I lost all my work.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's great, unemployed, and don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. And then I got this award, which comes with like $20,000, and it truly kept me alive. I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah, it's just so incredible. I mean, it's
so
one of many awards you've received this year, and I know, the whole idea of finances coming in for artists is such a big theme right now, since we're all sort of biding our time till we can actually work again.
Exactly.
Tim, I know you started out as an actor, but yes, you did. I remember you then. But you've spoken about how the lack of work for Asian actors at the time led you to pursue writing your own material. Can you talk a little more about that transition?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I would say that I don't know about the thing is, when in the 90s, when you looked like me, if you weren't right for one of the 3 shows that were available to you, then you were SOL, right? Mm-hmm. What people fail to kind of identify, though, is when you don't look like me, there's more than 3 shows that you're right for. So when there's a show that you're not right for, it's okay. You can kind of go somewhere else. You can find your family. We didn't always have that luxury. And so kind of sort of subconsciously understanding what that was, led to the only solution that I felt I was capable of doing, which is just continuing to contribute to that. I guess John Gardner called it the ancient abyss. You have to floor it with art. Like I just was like, I'm just going to keep writing these stories, and hopefully something will stick. But I had always been musical as a kid, so like it wasn't really that like harsh a transition.
Well, I think it's a theme for all of us, just in terms of why we ended up, doing what we do and wanting to create stories for people who look like us. Tia, you're working at moving the inclusion conversation forward through your work as a co-founder of Bold.
Yeah.
And you work on the AEA, the Actors Equity Association Committee for the Equal Employment Opportunity and Diversity. How does that mission live in the material you write?
Yeah, I think, after, graduating from school and pounding the pavement and auditioning and booking even, I really just wanted to make this industry easier for people of color and especially Black women. My brother, he would come and see my shows, and the one of the last ones I did, he said, I just don't want to see you get beaten up anymore. Because every single show, really a lot of the shows for Black women in lead roles, they get beaten up, they die at the end. There's just really not a lot of happy endings. And so I wanted some levity, some lightness, some comedy. And so that's really why I kind of started writing and doing the work with Bold too, and just supporting Black women and supporting, and with Actors Equity, a lot of it is just like having really those hard conversations that need to be had, in dressing rooms, and encouraging, those kinds of discourse that like help people be more inclusive on all levels.
Yeah. It's so wonderful, the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Jessica, your latest show, Coupelle of Chimney Town, was slated to be off Broadway next season. And I noticed you've been making a lot of music, recording a lot of the music from the show. What's the current status of the musical?
That's an excellent question. I think like most of us during this, what's being dubbed the lost summer or the lost season, is a lot of us have like the work has pivoted. So we've been really quite lucky to our producing company is international. So despite our city having felt the brunt of entertainment being kind of waylaid for the moment, the international audience is in a different place, like emotionally and in like economically and everything. So we've been really lucky that our producing company, which is based out of Japan, has been really thirsting for work, for content. So we've done a lot of the YouTube demos and all that such. We did a big online presentation in September. And it looks like we're, as opposed to opening, they had like a theater booked for Theater Row in September. That didn't happen. That was like, 2 months ago. So they have pivoted to instead next year, they're going to be doing a debut in Japan. And whenever things happen, they'll look to shift it over here. But they've done a really amazing job of like pivoting and really going where the interest is and where the availability is.
That's terrific. I think pivoting is the word that we're all doing. We are
pivot step
daily trying to figure out what's next. How do we do this? Which leads me to this Golden Day, which was a major pivot on the part of Emerson, on the part of Live and in Color, trying to like create virtual content as many of us artists are doing. So tomorrow night is opening night of this Golden Day, which we're very excited about. And I have to say, I'm so excited for the world to see the work of these 17 amazing writers who I think are what American musical theater is and what the future of American musical theater is. And I'm always so honored to get to collaborate with brilliant minds like yourselves. I want to ask you about your experience creating this show. I originally approached all of you with this crazy idea and asked you to choose a religion that inspired you and relate it to the idea of the golden rule, and then turn it into a scene and a song. Anyone can jump in, but what was your experience like, your journey with these little gems that we've created? Anyone want to go? They're all in shock. Well, I want to start with Tim then, because Tim, you had the very interesting assignment of creating the bookends for the show, of creating an opening and closing for a show that did not exist yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would say that I did not get the prompt to pick a religion, so I didn't feel qualified to answer this question. But so when you approached me, Dev, you'd said, okay, so this was what we were going to do. This is how we're pivoting, and now it's a song cycle. And I believe the initial request was, can you write an opening number, and then maybe we can just reprise it at the end. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then I started to think about what makes a song cycle different from a concert, which is a little like we really want to like finish in a very different place. So I wanted the opening and the closing to have a kind of relationship, a parity, either a call and response or a question and an answer. So that said, as luck would have it, I had just been invited to write a piece for Broadway Inspirational Voices in Ronald McDonald House. They have this thing called Songs in the Key of Me, where you interview a former patient from Ronald McDonald House, and you kind of put their voice to song. And as luck would have it, the thing about this particular patient that I kind of glommed onto and wrote about really seemed to speak to something larger. It seemed to speak specifically to what the nature of this song cycle was. So I kind of took that and sort of, I mean, I basically borrowed the chorus, and then I just rewrote around the chorus to make a finale, which was basically would then be the answer. And I was like, well, if that's the answer, then what's the question? And so I kind of retrofit it, I guess, in that sense. But it was really cool because the arrangement for one had happened to be kind of electric, and I was like, okay, that'll be fun. And I wanted a certain amount of diversity. So like before I even started writing the opening, there were certain like things I could not do if I wanted to create that diversity. Yeah, that's basically kind of where I took it. And it helped a lot, I think, to have the students, your cast's audition videos to kind of refer to, just so I knew who I was writing for. But that's kind of where I started.
Yeah, and that was sort of a big thing with this project, was you all got to pair it up with a cast member, so there was sort of an inspiration there in terms of their talent and who they were. And I think what's so unique about this is that you were writing for a specific actor, but at the same time, I find all these I'm calling them mini musicals, 5-minute mini musicals. They really are your individual voices and each of your perspectives on the world right now. Jessica, can you just talk a little bit about your piece and your way in and what we ended up doing?
Yeah, I have to say that like getting those audition videos was just so wonderful. The students are so talented. I feel like, not a knock on my generation, but the wealth of talent out there is just mind-boggling right now. And so a lot of how Beast Under the Bridge, which is the title of the one that I wrote, actually came from a conversation with Stephanie, who was my actor that I got paired up with. And it really kind of stemmed from this, when Dev approached us, one of the things was that these pieces, should speak to our current, not like situation, because that sounds really dire, but like our current remote, the way that we are doing theater right now. And so my mind went to, like all the kids these days doing their TikToks and their Instagram lives. And I just asked Stephanie what was something that she would Instagram live. And we got to talking about climate change. And it wasn't where I thought we were going to go. And the whole thing just came out of this amazing, her passion for like climate change, activism. And I'm just so proud of what we created and how every student who's involved in it has their thoughts and opinions and their feelings on how to handle the things that come up in the piece. So yeah, I don't know if I want to give too much away.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we don't want to give too much away, but I have to say the students are having a ball with your piece, and in fact, all of them. And there's been a lot of very provocative conversation, and I think from our audience too when they see them. Tia, for most of you work by yourself, but Tia, your partner is Masi Asare, who's Live and in Color alum. Talk a little bit about your piece and what the two of you created.
Yes, ours has to do with forgiveness. And so I was thinking about, when I saw Roberta's tape and trying to relate to where she was in her life, that's kind of where I was approaching it, and like where I was in my life. I was really working to like forgive a lot of people in my life, actually, when I was her age. And so I had to, so that was kind of where that came from. And also the verse from the Tao, overcoming others calls for strength and overcoming yourself. Because what I also discovered was part of forgiving is overcoming yourself. It's for you more than it is for other people. So that was really fun. And then Masi had these great ideas of like, a young woman taking a journey through, but also coming to a place where she realized that she learned something from the last person who she's like, I forgive you for ruining my life. But she comes to a place, well, I guess I just gave it away, but.
Too much. But it's a very specific person she learns from.
Yes, it's a very specific person that she learns from. That was sort of Masi's idea. And so we just kind of ran with that. And it was really fun. It was a fun collaboration. And like Jessica was saying, seeing the audition videos, it was just so helpful to kind of put face to it and everything.
Yan, will you talk a little bit about your piece? I mean, yours was, you even used the same character name as the actor, and yours feels very, very far away.
Well, it's funny because when you approached me with this, I jumped at the chance because I actually minored in religious philosophy in undergrad with Eastern religions as a specialty. So having Hinduism being sort of the umbrella religion was really fascinating. Simply because they're like in Hinduism, every single facet of life is symbolic and attributed to some philosophy or some deity or something like that. And then pairing that with seeing Max's audition video, seeing that he was Asian, it really got my brain firing about all the things we could do, how he felt about everything that's happened this year, and I kind of piggybacked off an earlier project I did in April, where I wrote these scripts for a Zoom series about these Asians dealing with traumatic racist experiences they've had by playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons and sort of putting themselves into the characters' roles and processing through those situations. And luckily enough, in Hinduism, the concept of an avatar is a representation of a god or a person who can sort of take on these ideas and process through them, sort of combining that concept in Hinduism with this earlier idea for the Dungeons and Dragons processing, sort of combined together with Max's personality to create the piece, create AA Dex.
AA Dex, the first Asian American superheroes. So.
Who doesn't know karate?
Yes, exactly.
Very important asterisk.
Exactly. And Rona, I know you have been so busy, and I know we went back and forth on what I'm always fascinated with the writing process because you originally came in with one idea and then ended up with something else. Talk a little bit about.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let go to actually get to the nugget of whatever it is that you're feeling in a moment. And I was trying so hard to write about a specific thing that was going on in my world in terms of like this moment where we're all stopping and reflecting on the diversity and the equity in our industry and who is pushing the conversation forward and then where does it feel like we're getting stifled? And I was trying to create this moment that kind of had happened in my world, and it just was feeling false for some reason. I couldn't muscle through it. I think I did like 4 or 5 drafts. So I threw it away. I just threw it away. And then I was like, I'm just going to sit down at the piano, and whatever comes out of my fingers and my mouth is what this is supposed to be. And I just wrote a completely different piece that was feeling, I don't know, it just got really personal and is more about kind of the cyclical nature of the golden rule to me, you know, that what we're doing in a generational way, more like the work that we're putting in to be good and create a world for the next generation, and feeding off of the hope that we have for that next generation, and that cyclical nature of it.
Yeah, and not to give too much away, I mean, Rona said it right in the heat of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so, it's been really wonderful to watch all of you work and dive into this, because there's something like the show really speaks to now in a very specific way. And you've captured so many facets of 2020 in so many wonderful theatrical ways. How has it been writing for the virtual environment for all of you? I mean, I know we've been doing a lot of it, but is it as exciting as writing for the stage, or what? I know for me personally, I went into this era as a live theater person completely resistant to anything virtual, and in my journey, I've discovered that there's actually gold in this in certain ways. I'm curious what your experience was. Anyone?
I feel like I learned a lot from you, Dev. And like making a rewrite and making it more interactive, because I think my characters do kind of tend to have like monologues with themselves, and so that doesn't really read very well when you are when you're watching a screen. It doesn't communicate as easily, and so this was the first thing that I think I've done for the virtual medium. So it was kind of cool to be like, oh, okay, this is going to be a little different in that way. So.
I would love to jump in and just say that, like, I think, when we first started this like weird last 8-9 months, I think like I first started, like when the first thing that I wrote during this period was like super isolated. Like it's like, oh, we can't have anybody talking to each other. We can't have anybody like interacting, or it has to be isolated because we're in these boxes. And it just turns out to really not be the truth. And that's something that has been really wonderful working through this project, being like, no, like have them interact, have them do, we can figure out backup vocals. We can figure out how to have them sing in the same space. We can figure these things out in, really adaptive, innovative ways that are not ever gonna look like our traditional views of theater, but are really cool. So it's been a learning experience, I think, more than anything.
Yes, daily, right? Anyone else have a?
I think it's really exciting because it decentralizes theater from New York, and it makes it so much more accessible to everybody else. And anyone who has an internet connection now can look at stories and see things without having to fork over $150 to see something once, and it just reaches a broader audience. Plus, I'm always a sucker for those where you like pass something off to one screen and someone else grabs it. That's just always exciting. It never gets old.
Yeah, I just feel like it's so fun to watch all of our creative artists in this industry figure out new ways to share their stories. Like, I like that we're trying to work with an audience, like, oh, let's have them have to answer poll questions on their cell phones. Or I don't know if you all saw what Celine Song did with the seagull. She did the seagull, but with the Sims. And like thousands of people were like watching these Sims characters in the seagull setting that Celine was just like creating on the spot. Like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So the fact that we're coming up with stuff like that, I think, is really cool.
Absolutely. I always say artists are like cockroaches. We're gonna survive. We're gonna create. We're gonna keep going, regardless of what's going on in the world. So, our mission at Live and in Color is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. I always ask this question because it's different for everyone, but for each of you, what does having a diverse working environment mean to you?
I'll go. I mean, it's really important for me. I find that I can be more free in diverse. I realized that when I am in a space that is not diverse, that like I filter myself more. And so I don't think that's very good as an artist to have to do that. And there's also like the level of explaining that I don't love, So for me, it's everything. It's necessary.
Yeah, you feel a huge difference in a room that is very diverse versus a room that's maybe you're the only one that is not diverse, that is creating that in the space. And that's when you feel like a lot of pressure where questions will be asked and suddenly all eyes turn to you. And you're just like, oh, crap, now I have to represent millions of people. It's like, nobody wants to do that. So, yeah, it's just like, and why would you not want to have the perspective of many different people to create your piece? Like it only elevates your piece. So I just find those rooms to be so much more stimulating, and the work that comes out of it just like popping.
Tim, were you going to say something?
I was. I'm not sure it's. I mean, just. I was going to respond to the question in a different way. I think fundamentally, what diversity means to me, for starters, is gender parity in the room. Because like we could have, an entire like creative team of like yellow and black and brown people, and if they're all men, I just still want to gag. I just want to throw up in my mouth. I just want to tell them to all stop trying to solve a problem that you think just answer the freaking question. Like every time there's just always this level of, oh, here's what I think you mean, so I'm gonna address that instead of listen to what you actually said. That I find so much less happens so infrequently when I'm in a room with women as well, if that makes any sense. So just on a very basic level, gender parity is really important to me. And then beyond that, like obviously I think that having POC in the room is really important. I think that when we are writing outside of our own experience, to have more than one person who's from that experience is always super helpful. I think I'm not sure that I understood the question correctly though, because like that was the first thing that came to mind was, geez, like great, like I see a room full of dudes patting themselves on the back for being diverse, and what does that mean? Like, sorry, that was vulgar. I apologize.
That reminds me of like just communication styles as well. Like when I'm the only woman or person of color in a room, I sometimes feel like my way of communicating is not understood or maybe valued, or I have to like fight really hard to get a word in edgewise, and then I feel completely drained afterwards, as opposed to, a more communal style of communicating. So, yeah.
Yan, anything to add there?
I echo everything that's been said. I think I would ultimately hope that walking into a theater rehearsal would feel just the same as walking down the street. Like there's no entering into some weird voodoo world where everyone's suddenly just like one color or one gender or anything else, but it's as diverse as just walking through the neighborhood. Because I don't make it a point to hang out with white men 5 days a week in my normal life. So it would be nice not to have to do that in the professional life too. Not that there's anything wrong with that. The barbershop quartets are great, but it's, yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, I again, like I feel so honored to be in your company, and all the other writers. I think you have given an extraordinary gift to the students at Emerson College and to Emerson College themselves with your generosity and your talent. I sort of feel it's really important to, educate, inspire the next generation, and you definitely are doing that of artists. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. Everyone who's watching, please make sure to check out This Golden Day. We are out of time, but I just want to say thank you to Annie Levy at Emerson Stage, Tim, Tia, Jessica, Rona, and Yan. Thank you for joining me. And thank you to the 11 other writers of This Golden Day who made this all possible. Masi Asare, Joshua Bentoncourt, Nancy Chesser, Maggie Kate Coleman, David Davin, Trent Jeffords, Kim Jin Young, Erato Cremida, Jaime Lozano, Marcus Perkins, Savan, and Paolo K. Tirol. You know, it's an extraordinary bunch of people. This has been such a wonderfully unique experience. To reserve your tickets to This Golden Day, go to emersonstage.org/thisgoldenday. Tickets are only $12. You're not going to want to miss this exciting, completely virtual new musical that is actually performed completely live, which is the big thing. The technology for this is hopefully going to work. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Also, be sure to tune in next week for another special episode of Be Our Guest, where we will be having a guest host for the first time. The amazing Maria Christine Oliveras from shows such as Amelie, Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, Mackinac, and Heroes Lights Love will be with us, and she will have a very special guest. Before we go, Rona, would you mind leading us in a little toast just to send us off?
Moi?
Yes.
Well, here is to an amazing experience with Emerson College, with no, don't make me do this, Deb. No, ask somebody else. Put that out. Ask somebody else. It's not my favorite.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I would like to drink a toast to finding ways to create community and family even when the natural world says we can't.
Here, here.
Cheers.
Everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks for being
Gumbe.
here. Everyone. See you next week.